Dr. Hansel Park sat in her dark office, staring at the computer screen. The only light came from the display showing strange data from space telescopes. It was past midnight at the Korean Space Research Institute, but she couldn't leave. Something wasn't right with the numbers. She took another sip of her cold coffee and looked at the data again. The giant black hole she had been watching for the past 6 months was not where it should be. At first, she thought it was a mistake in her calculations, but after checking everything 3 times, she was sure. The black hole was moving through space. "This can't be right," she said to herself, rubbing her tired eyes. Everyone knew that black holes stayed in one place, only pulling things toward them. They didn't travel across space like planets or stars. The office door opened, and Dr. Jin-Woo Kim walked in. He was Han Sol's colleague, and had been working late too. "You're still here?" he asked, turning on the lights. "It's almost 1 a.m. Han Sol pointed at her screen. "Jin-Woo, look at this. Something strange is happening with black hole NGC 7891. Jin-Woo came closer and looked at the data. His eyes widened as he read the numbers. "There must be something wrong with the telescope," he said quickly. "Black holes don't move like this." "I've checked data from 3 different space telescopes," Han Sol replied. "They all show the same thing. This black hole is moving through space at an incredible speed." Jin-Woo shook his head. "That's impossible. Maybe there's an error in the computer system." "I've already checked everything," Han Sol said. She pulled up more images on her screen. "Look at these pictures from the last 6 months. You can see its changing position relative to the nearby stars." Jin-Woo sat down heavily in a chair. "If you're right, this changes everything we know about black holes." He paused, thinking. "But we need to be absolutely sure before we tell anyone. The scientific community will not accept this easily." Han Sol nodded. She understood the risk. Making such a big claim without solid proof could ruin their careers. But she also knew this could be the biggest discovery in physics since Einstein's theory of relativity. "I have a plan," she said, opening a new file on her computer. "We can use the new radio telescope array to track its movement more precisely. If we collect data for another month, we'll have enough evidence to prove it's really moving." Jin-Woo looked worried. "You want to keep this secret for a whole month?" "Just until we're completely sure," Han Sol replied. "We'll need help, though. We should bring Yoon-Ah Lee into this. She's the best at analyzing telescope data." Jin-Woo agreed. Yoon-Ah was young but brilliant. She had already impressed everyone with her work on black hole radiation. The next morning, they called Yoon-Ah to Han Sol's office. When they showed her the data, she didn't say anything for a long time. She just kept looking at the numbers and images. Finally, she looked up at them. "Dr. Park, if this is real, we're looking at something that could change our understanding of the universe." Her voice was excited but nervous. Han Sol smiled. "That's why we need your help, Yoon-Ah. We have 1 month to prove this is real. Can you help us?" Yoon-Ah's eyes sparkled with enthusiasm. "Of course. When do we start?" As the 3 scientists began planning their research, none of them knew they were about to uncover something much bigger than a moving black hole. They didn't know their discovery would soon connect them to something far beyond Earth's science and technology. They were about to find the first piece of a puzzle that would change humanity forever. The Korean Space Research Institute was quiet that morning. In one small office, 3 people looked at computer screens filled with numbers and pictures. They were starting a journey that would lead them to the biggest scientific discovery in human history. But for now, they simply had work to do and a moving black hole to track. 1 month passed quickly at the Korean Space Research Institute. Yoon-Ah Lee hadn't gone home much during this time. She spent most nights in the data analysis lab, searching through information from space telescopes around the world. Her desk was covered with empty coffee cups and half-eaten sandwich wrappers. Tonight was different. Tonight, she found something that made her hands shake as she reached for her phone. "Dr. Park, you need to come to the lab right now," she said when Han Sol answered. Her voice trembled with excitement. I found more of them. 20 minutes later, Han Sol and Jinwoo rushed into the lab. They found Yuna standing in front of the main screen, which showed several star maps with marked points. Look at these, Yuna said, pointing to the screen. I found 5 more black holes showing the same movement pattern as NGC 7891. They're all traveling through space at similar speeds. Han Sol moved closer to the screen, her eyes wide. Are you absolutely sure about this? Yuna nodded firmly. I checked everything 3 times. I even created new computer models to track their movements. These black holes are definitely traveling through space, and they're doing it in ways that shouldn't be possible. Jinwoo sat down at a nearby computer and started looking through Yuna's data. This is incredible, he said after a few minutes. The movement patterns are almost identical. It's like they're following some kind of path. That's not all, Yuna said, typing commands into her computer. A new image appeared on the screen. It showed complex mathematical equations and graphs. I think I know why no one noticed this before. The black holes are moving in a way that hides their motion from most normal observations. Han Sol studied the equations. What do you mean? It's like they're moving through space in a special way, Yuna explained, using her hands to show the motion. They create small distortions that make them look like they're standing still, unless you know exactly what to look for. We only noticed NGC 7891 because we happened to look at it from the right angle at the right time. Jinwoo shook his head in amazement. This can't be natural. The patterns are too precise. I agree, Han Sol said quietly, but we need to be very careful about suggesting that. The scientific community already thinks the idea of moving black holes is crazy. If we start talking about them moving in apparently deliberate ways, they'll think we've lost our minds. Jinwoo finished. Yuna sat down at her computer again. Then we need to make our evidence so strong that they can't ignore it. I've been working on a new mathematical model that might explain how these movements are possible. She pulled up another set of equations. See, if we consider the way space-time curves around a black hole and add in some ideas from quantum mechanics, there might be a way for a black hole to create a kind of sliding effect through space. Han Sol and Jinwoo spent the next hour going through Yuna's calculations. The more they looked, the more excited they became. This wasn't just a discovery about moving black holes anymore. This was something that could change humanity's understanding of how the universe worked. We need to publish this, Han Sol finally said. All of it. The observations, the mathematical models, everything. What about the scientific community? Jinwoo asked. They'll attack our research. Let them, Han Sol replied with determination. Our evidence is solid, and something tells me we're just seeing the tip of something much bigger. As the 3 scientists began preparing their research for publication, none of them realized how right Han Sol was. The moving black holes were indeed just the beginning. Soon, they would discover that the universe was far stranger and far less empty than anyone had imagined. Dr. Do-hyun Choi stared at his computer screen in the Deep Space Monitoring Division. His hands felt cold as he checked the calculations for the 4th time. The numbers didn't change, and that worried him deeply. He picked up his phone and called Dr. Han Sol Park. Dr. Park, could you come to my office right away? There's something you need to see. His voice was steady, but his hand shook slightly as he put down the phone. When Han Sol arrived 15 minutes later, she found Do-hyun plotting points on a large star map. The room was dark except for the blue light from his screens. What's wrong? She asked, noticing his serious expression. Do-hyun pointed to the map. I've been tracking the movements of all the black holes you discovered. Most of them are moving in random directions, but this one. He pointed to a blinking red dot. This one concerns me. Han Sol moved closer to see better. Which one is it? It's black hole NGC 7891, the first one you found, Do-hyun said. He pressed a button, and a line appeared on the map, showing the black hole's path. I calculated its trajectory for the next 100 years. The line extended across the map, and Hansol's eyes widened as she saw where it led. "That can't be right," she whispered. "I checked it multiple times," Do-hyun said quietly. "At its current speed and direction, this black hole will pass dangerously close to our solar system in approximately 97 years. Hansol sat down heavily in a nearby chair. "How close?" "Close enough to severely disrupt the orbits of our outer planets." Do-hyun pulled up another diagram. "If it continues on this exact path, it could potentially pull Pluto and Neptune out of their orbits. The gravitational effects could reach as far as Saturn." "Could it affect Earth?" Hansol asked, her voice tense. Do-hyun nodded slowly. "Not directly, but the disruption to the outer planets could destabilize the entire solar system over time. We would see significant effects on Earth within a few hundred years." Hansol stood up and began pacing the room. "We need to tell someone about this. The government, NASA, other space agencies." "That's why I called you first," Do-hyun said. "Your team discovered these moving black holes. How do we tell the world that one of them might threaten Earth without causing panic? Most people still don't even believe they can move." Hansol thought for a moment. "We need more data. Can you keep tracking it? Monitor any changes in its path." "Already doing that," Do-hyun replied. "I've also started running simulations of different scenarios. Maybe if we understand exactly how it moves, we can predict if it will change course." They spent the next few hours reviewing the data. As they worked, Hansol noticed something strange in the black hole's movement pattern. "Do-hyun, look at this," she said, pointing to a graph. "The black hole's path isn't completely straight. It makes tiny adjustments every few months, almost like it's navigating around something." Do-hyun finished her thought. They looked at each other, both thinking the same thing but afraid to say it out loud. "We need to call an emergency meeting," Hansol finally said. "Get everyone together. Jinwoo, Yuna, and add Dr. Soo-min Kang from the quantum physics department. She might be able to help us understand these movement patterns better." As Do-hyun sent out the meeting requests, Hansol looked back at the map showing the black hole's path toward their solar system. She couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't just a random threat from space. Something about the black hole's movement seemed too precise, too planned. What they had discovered was no longer just an interesting scientific phenomenon. It was now potentially the biggest threat humanity had ever faced. Or perhaps, though she hardly dared think it, humanity's first contact with something far beyond their understanding. The main conference room at the Korean Space Research Institute was filled with screens showing faces from around the world. Scientists from NASA, ESA, and other space agencies had gathered virtually to discuss the moving black holes. Dr. Hansol Park stood at the front of the room, explaining their findings to the international audience. "As you can see from our data," she said, pointing to a chart, "black hole NGC 7891 is on a trajectory that will bring it near our solar system within a century." The room erupted with questions and concerned voices. Hansol noticed that many of the scientists looked worried, while others seemed skeptical. She had expected this reaction. Dr. Soo-min Kang, who sat quietly in the corner of the room, raised her hand. Hansol nodded, giving her permission to speak. Soo-min stood up, her face serious. "I have a theory about these black holes," she said. The room fell silent. "After studying the movement patterns with my quantum physics team, we believe these motions are not natural. They show signs of control and purpose." The screens exploded with noise again. "That's impossible," someone shouted. "Black holes can't be controlled." "Please, let Dr. Kang finish," Hansol said firmly. The room quieted down again. Soo-min walked to the front and displayed her own data. "Look at these movement patterns. They show precise adjustments that avoid collisions with other celestial objects. Natural objects don't move this way. These black holes are being guided." A NASA scientist spoke up. "Are you suggesting some kind of artificial control?" That's a very bold claim, Dr. Kang. I am, Su Min replied confidently, and I believe I can prove it mathematically. She began explaining her calculations, showing how the black hole's movements followed patterns that couldn't be explained by natural forces. As she spoke, Han Sol watched the faces on the screens. She saw the moment when doubt began turning to consideration, and then to worry. If Su Min was right, it meant something out there had technology far beyond human understanding. Jin Woo stood up next. We need to form an international task force, he said. If these black holes are under intelligent control, we need to understand why one of them is heading toward our solar system. The head of the European Space Agency nodded. Agreed. We should combine our resources. Dr. Park, can your team coordinate this effort? Han Sol looked at her team. Jin Woo, Yuna, Do Hyun, and Su Min. They all nodded. Yes, we can do that. But we'll need full access to all major telescopes and computing resources. You'll have it, the NASA director said. We'll send our best people to help. This is now humanity's top priority. As the meeting continued, Yuna approached Han Sol quietly. Dr. Park, while everyone was talking, I noticed something in the new data. The black hole. It started emitting strange radiation patterns. Han Sol felt her heart beat faster. What kind of patterns? Regular pulses, like a signal. Yuna's voice was barely a whisper. I think someone might be trying to communicate with us. Han Sol looked back at the screens filled with concerned scientists. She would tell them about this new discovery soon, but first she needed to be sure. If Yuna was right, they weren't just dealing with moving black holes anymore. They might be about to make first contact with an intelligence capable of controlling the most powerful forces in the universe. The conference room buzzed with plans and discussions, but Han Sol's mind was already racing ahead. Whatever was coming toward Earth, they had less than a century to prepare for it. And somehow, she knew that everything they were about to learn would change humanity forever. Dr. Myra Song walked through the doors of the Korean Space Research Institute with a mix of excitement and nervousness. As the country's leading expert in patterns and signals, she had been called in to study the strange radiation coming from black hole NGC 7891. The main laboratory was filled with people when she arrived. Dr. Han Sol Park greeted her warmly. Thank you for coming so quickly, Dr. Song. We've been recording these signals for 3 days now, but we can't make sense of them. Mi-Ray nodded and followed Han Sol to a computer station where Yuna was working. The screen showed waves of radiation patterns that pulsed in regular intervals. Show her what we found this morning, Han Sol said to Yuna. Yuna pulled up a new set of data. The signals changed pattern exactly at midnight. Look at how regular these pulses are. They repeat every 7 minutes and 13 seconds exactly. Mi-Ray leaned closer to the screen, her eyes scanning the patterns. This isn't random radiation, she said quietly. These are deliberate broadcasts. Someone is trying to get our attention. The room fell silent. Even though many had suspected this, hearing it confirmed made it real. Humanity was receiving its first message from an unknown intelligence. Can you decode it? Han Sol asked. Mi-Ray sat down at the computer. I'll need time, but yes, I think I can. These patterns remind me of mathematical sequences. Whoever is sending this wants to make sure we can understand it. Over the next few hours, Mi-Ray worked with Yuna to analyze the signals. They found that each pulse contained layers of information, like pages in a book. The first layer was simple mathematics, basic equations that proved the signal was artificial. Look at this, Mi-Ray said, pointing to her screen. They're teaching us how to read their language, step by step. First math, then basic concepts, then more complex ideas. Dr. Sunin Kang joined them, bringing her quantum physics expertise. The way they're sending these signals is fascinating. They're using the black hole's own radiation to communicate. The technology required for this must be incredible. As the day went on, Mi-Ray began to understand more of the message. Her hands trembled as she explained what she found to the team. "They're ancient," she said, looking up from her work. "The civilization sending these signals has been using black holes as transportation for millions of years. They've been watching us, waiting for us to notice them. Waiting for us to be ready," Hansol added, understanding dawning on her face. Mireille nodded. "The black hole coming toward our solar system. It's not a threat. It's an invitation. They want to show us how to join their network of traveling black holes." Jinwoo, who had been quiet until now, spoke up. "But why wait until now? Why not contact us earlier?" "Because we weren't ready before," Mireille explained. "We needed to discover the moving black holes on our own. That was the test, to see if we could notice what was happening in deep space and understand its significance." Hansol looked out the laboratory window at the night sky. Somewhere out there, an ancient civilization was reaching out to humanity, offering knowledge that could change everything. The moving black hole wasn't just coming to visit. It was coming to connect Earth to a vast network of worlds and civilizations. "We need to prepare the world for this," Hansol said finally. "This isn't just first contact. This is an invitation to join something much bigger than ourselves." As the team continued working through the night, none of them could quite believe that they were part of such a historic moment. Humanity's understanding of the universe was about to change forever, and it had all started with a simple question. Can black holes travel through space? The Korean Space Research Institute never slept these days. Even at 3 in the morning, the main conference room buzzed with activity. Dr. Hansol Park and Dr. Myra Song worked together at the central table, surrounded by screens showing data from the black hole's signals. "The messages are becoming clearer," Myra said, pointing to her latest translations. "They're giving us instructions on how to communicate back to them." Hansol leaned forward, studying the complex patterns on the screen. "Can we do it? Do we have the technology to send signals through a black hole?" "Not yet," said Dr. Jae-ho Baek, walking into the room with a stack of papers. As the team's theoretical physicist, he had been working on understanding how the ancient civilization controlled black holes. "But I think I know how we might do it." Jae-ho spread his papers on the table. They were covered with equations and diagrams. "The signals tell us that black holes can be used like doors in space. If we understand how to open these doors, we can talk through them." Mireille nodded excitedly. "That matches what I've translated. The ancient civilization doesn't travel through the black holes. They use them to send signals and energy across vast distances instantly." Hansol called the rest of the team to gather around. Soon, Jinwoo, Yoona, Do-hyun, and Soo-min joined them at the table. "Show them what you found." "Jae-ho," Hansol said. Jae-ho pulled up a computer model. "Look at this. The black hole's radiation isn't random. It creates patterns in space-time, like ripples in a pond. If we can make similar ripples, we can send messages back." Soo-min studied the model closely. "We would need to build special equipment, something that can create controlled quantum fluctuations in space-time." "Can we do it in time?" Hansol asked. "The black hole will reach our solar system in less than a century." "We don't need to wait that long," Mireille said. "The messages say we only need to show we understand how to communicate. Once we do that, they'll help us build better equipment." The team worked through the night, combining their different areas of expertise. Jae-ho and Soo-min worked on the theoretical framework for the communication device. Do-hyun used his deep space monitoring equipment to track the black hole's signals more precisely. Yoon-ah analyzed the data patterns, while Mireille continued translating the messages. As morning approached, Hansol gathered everyone together again. "We need to present this to the world's governments," she said. "They need to understand what we're dealing with." "Will they believe us?" Jinwoo asked. "This sounds like science fiction. Using black holes for communication, an ancient civilization reaching out to us." "We have proof now," Hansol replied. "The signals, the mathematics, the consistent patterns. No one can deny that something intelligent is trying to contact us. Mayray looked up from her computer suddenly. Everyone, look at this. I just decoded another message. They're not just teaching us how to communicate. They're offering to share their understanding of the universe. They say they've been waiting thousands of years for humanity to reach this point. The room fell silent as they considered what this meant. They weren't just planning how to talk to aliens anymore. They were preparing humanity to join a community of civilizations that had mastered the forces of space and time itself. We have work to do, Hansol said firmly. Humanity's future depends on what we do next. The first successful message to the ancient civilization was sent on a quiet Tuesday morning. The team at the Korean Space Research Institute had worked for months to build their quantum communication device. Now they waited nervously for a response. Dr. Mai Risong sat at her computer, watching the incoming signal patterns. The room was silent except for the soft hum of machines. Dr. Hansol Park stood behind her, while the rest of the team watched from their stations. There's something coming through, Mayray said suddenly, her fingers moving quickly over the keyboard. The patterns are changing. The main screen lit up with new data. The black hole's radiation had shifted into a clear, strong signal. Mayray began translating immediately, her eyes widening as she read. They're congratulating us, she said, her voice filled with excitement. They say we're the first civilization in this sector of space to notice their network in over 10,000 years. Hansol leaned closer to the screen. What else are they saying? Mayray continued reading. They're explaining their network now. The moving black holes we discovered. They're like stations on a cosmic railway. Their civilization learned to create stable paths between black holes millions of years ago. Dr. Jaiho Baek spoke up from his station. Ask them how they control the black holes. How do they keep them from destroying everything around them? Mayray sent the question through their device. The response came quickly. As she translated it, her hands began to shake. They say the black holes aren't just moving through space, she explained. They're moving through time as well. Their civilization exists across multiple times and places, all connected through this network. The team looked at each other in amazement. Dr. Sumin Kang was the first to speak. That explains the quantum readings we couldn't understand. They're not just bending space. They're bending time itself. More messages arrived. Mayray translated them as quickly as she could. They say they've been watching Earth for thousands of years, waiting for us to develop enough to understand their signals. The black hole coming toward our solar system. It's carrying something they call a junction gate. What's a junction gate? Jinwoo asked. Mayray sent another question and waited for the response. It's a device that will let us connect to their network. But they say we have a choice to make. They never force any civilization to join. Hansol nodded thoughtfully. They want us to decide on our own. There's more, Mayray said, reading new data. They say Earth is at a critical point in its development. In the next few centuries, we will either destroy ourselves or reach out to the stars. They want to help us choose the better path. Yuna, who had been quiet until now, spoke up. Ask them why they use black holes. Why not some other way to travel through space? The answer came back quickly. Mayray smiled as she translated it. They say black holes are the universe's natural gateways. They exist everywhere, connecting different points in space and time. Their civilization simply learned how to use what was already there. Do-hyun checked his monitors. The black hole's radiation is changing again. They're sending us something else. The screens filled with new data, images, diagrams, and mathematical formulas. Mayray gasped as she began to understand what she was seeing. This is it, she said softly. This is what they've been waiting to share with us. It's their history, their science, their understanding of the universe. They're showing us everything. The team gathered around the main screen, watching as humanity's first real glimpse of an advanced civilization's knowledge appeared before them. They had passed the test. Now they had to decide what to do with this incredible gift. The United Nations General Assembly Hall in New York was filled to capacity. Representatives from every nation on Earth had gathered to hear the presentation from the Korean Space Research Institute team. Dr. Han-Sol Park stood at the podium, facing the world's leaders. For the past year, she began, we have been in communication with an advanced civilization that uses black holes to travel through space and time. Today, we must decide whether to accept their invitation to join their network. The hall was completely silent. Behind Han-Sol, large screens showed the data and messages they had received. Dr. Mai Song stood nearby, ready to explain the translations. The junction gate will arrive in our solar system in 96 years, Han-Sol continued. But we must make our decision now. If we accept, they will begin teaching us the science we need to prepare for its arrival. A representative from the United States stood up. How can we trust them? What if this is a trap? Mai stepped forward to answer. They have already shared vast amounts of knowledge with us. Their technology could help us solve climate change, energy problems, and diseases. They have shown us nothing but patience and respect. Dr. Jae-ho Bok joined them at the podium. We have tested their scientific information. Everything they've shared matches our most advanced theories about the universe. They're not trying to trick us. They're trying to help us grow. The questions continued for hours. The team explained everything they had learned about the ancient civilization and their network of black holes. They showed how the aliens had watched humanity develop, waiting for the right moment to make contact. Think about what this means, Han-Sol said passionately. We would not just gain new technology. We would join a community of civilizations that has existed for millions of years. We could learn from their experiences, their mistakes, their successes. Dr. Su-Min Kang presented the scientific benefits. Their understanding of quantum physics and space-time could advance our science by centuries. We could solve problems that seem impossible today. As the day went on, the mood in the hall began to change. Fear and suspicion slowly turned to curiosity and hope. More and more representatives spoke in favor of accepting the invitation. Finally, it was time to vote. The room grew quiet again as nations began to make their choices. Han-Sol watched the screens, holding her breath as the numbers changed. When the final vote was displayed, the hall erupted in applause. The decision was nearly unanimous. Humanity had chosen to reach for the stars. After the vote, the team gathered in a small room to send their response through the quantum communication device. Mi-Ray typed the message with shaking hands. We accept your invitation. We choose to join the network. The response came almost immediately. As Mi-Ray translated it, tears filled her eyes. They say they're proud of us. They believe humanity will bring new ideas and energy to their network. They're looking forward to meeting us face to face when the junction gate arrives. Han-Sol looked at her team. Jinwoo, Yuna, Do-hyun, Su-Min, Jae-ho, and Mi-Ray. Together, they had changed the course of human history. It had all started with a simple observation of a moving black hole, and now humanity was taking its first steps toward becoming a truly cosmic civilization. The real work begins now, Han-Sol said, smiling at her colleagues. We have 96 years to prepare Earth for its greatest adventure. Let's make every day count. Outside the United Nations building, the night sky sparkled with stars. Somewhere out there, a black hole was moving through space, carrying humanity's future with it. The universe was no longer a dark, empty place. It was filled with friends waiting to welcome Earth into their ancient network, all connected by the mysterious travelers known as black holes.